Okay, so starting with first topic of quantitative methods, which is time value of money. So before we go into discussing the time value of money or what it actually is, uh, just to give you an overview that what actually it means or what is actually time value of money. Time value of money simply says that money will lose value over time. That is, if you have $100 today, that $100 will not be the same as $100 after 1 year or $100 of future. That means $100 of today would be equal to some other amount of future and not the same as the $100 of future. And it will continue to lose value as you move on. So then the next question arises that what will be the equivalency rate? That is, if $100 is not equal to $100, then what is the amount that they are equal to? So let's say I tell you that this $100 is equal to $90 of tomorrow or $90 after 1 year. So I tell you that if you get $100 today, sorry, not 90, $110. So I tell you that if you get $100 today or you get $110 after 1 year, both will give you the same value. That is, money will lose value, and so $100 of today will be $110 of period ending 1 year. So this means this future value of $110 is the same as present value of $100. Now next question is that what is this rate at which they lose value or money lose value? So this rate at which money is losing value is known as interest rate or known as discount rate. So discount rate or interest rate is the rate at which money will be losing value. So in this case, what will be the discount rate? Discount rate will be future value divided by present value minus 1. So future value divided by present value minus 1, which is 10%, is your discount rate or is your interest rate. Now the next question is that if this is the interest rate, then how do we actually arrive at this interest rate? Or how do we actually measure this interest rate, or what is this interest rate, or what is this discount rate? So remember, any discount rate have some specific or different components. So some of the basic components are that discount rate should have, or the interest rate should have, at least real risk-free rate. What do we mean by real risk-free rate? Risk-free rate is the rate which you can receive or the return which you can receive by investing into a risk-free asset. That is, for example, a government bond or a government asset. So if you invest into a treasury bond or a treasury or for Pakistan PIB, that is Pakistan Investment Bond, or any other government bond, it is assumed that that government bond wouldn't have any risk. Why? Because it is assumed that government will not default. So risk is virtually zero. So the return that you get on that particular bond is known as risk-free rate. And by real means it excludes the impact of inflation. So when we say real in economics, it means excluding inflation. And when we say nominal in economics, it means including inflation. So this is the amount that you should at least get without the inflation. Then obviously if there is inflation, you need some premium for that as well. So a premium for inflation is added in interest rate. And when you combine these two, it becomes nominal risk-free rate. So that means you should at least get a nominal risk-free rate. That is another component in your required rate of return or interest. Then going forward, you will be making the investment for a specific period of time. So let's say that I can either make an investment for 10 years, or I can make an investment for 5 years, or I can make an investment for 20 years or 1 year. So that means the return for all these investments should be different. Why? Because in 1 year I have lesser risk, in 5 year I have greater risk, in 10 year I have even greater risk, and in 20 year the risk is highest among all. Why? Because I am getting my money stuck for 20 years and I do not know what will happen during these 20 years. So that means there should be a premium for this difference in time period as well, and that premium is known as maturity premium. That is premium for the maturity of the investment or time period of investment. And then if you are investing into any corporate bond or with any company or with anyone else other than government, then there is a risk that that party can default. So for government, credit risk or the risk of default is negligible or zero. But for any other party, there is a risk of default. So that means you should ask for premium for that default risk as well, which is known as default risk premium. So that means for any interest or for you to arrive at the interest rate, you should have a real risk-free rate. You should have a component for inflation, which makes up a nominal risk-free rate. Then you should have a premium for maturity and you should have a premium for default risk. All these premiums and rates combined would make your interest rate. And this would vary from investment to investment. If there is an investment for 5 years, maturity premium will be higher. If there is an investment for 1 year, maturity premium will be lower. If default risk is higher, credit risk, default risk is also known as credit risk. Remember this name or terminology as well. Default risk is also known as credit risk. So if credit risk or default risk is higher, then premium will be higher, and if it is lower, then premium will be lower. And using all of these, you make a rate, and that rate is used to discount back future cash flow to present and present cash flow to future. So you can bring back any future cash flow to present or take any present cash flow to future using this discount rate or interest rate. So simply speaking, discount rate would be the rate at which you will discount the cash flow. But when you are talking to someone, so for example, if you are talking to someone here in market or in investment market, the discount rate that they tell you or the discount rates definition that they take is that of policy rate. So discount rate is also synonymous to policy rate. Policy rate is the risk-free rate set by the central bank. This is the base rate at which with which all other rates are formed. So this is the base reference rate. But for now or for in our discussions, when we talk about discount rate, we would mean the rate at which we are discounting the cash flow and not the policy rate. I'm just telling you so that there is no confusion. Because when you talk to someone in investment markets and if you ask them about discount rate, they would tell you the policy rate. Policy rate would be fixed because this is set by central bank, but the rate for each investment, discount rate for each investment will be different based on its characteristics or its maturity. So do not confuse it with policy rate. So this means that, for example, if you are investing into 800 into a bond and that bond has a price of $800 as of today, and let's say that that bond has a par value of $1,000. So what is price and what is par value? So whenever you invest into a bond is a piece of paper or is a kind of an agreement that you can buy or you can sell. So when you buy a bond, you pay a price for that bond, let's say which is $800 here, and there will be certain maturity of the bond. There will be certain time after which it will expire or at which it will mature. So let's say the time or maturity is 5 years. So this means that when 5 years end, so you can pay 800 and get this piece of paper, and when 5 years end, then you will return this piece of paper, and in return you will get some amount. So in bond, bond is basically that financial asset, that piece of paper which you can buy for a price today, and when you return it after 1 year or whatever period or whatever the maturity is after 5 years, then you get some amount from the counterparty. That amount is known as par value. So for example, in this example, it is $1,000. So it means that I can buy bond for $800 today. I can invest $800 today, and after 5 years or whatever the maturity is, when I return that bond, I will receive $1,000. So it is the same as investing 800 today and receiving $1,000 after some period of time. Now the question is that why would you get $1,000 if you had bought it for 800? That is because money will change value over time. One reason, money will lose value over time. Another reason is that you took some risk. When you invested into it, you took some risk. You are giving your money to someone else. so some other corporation, so you are at the risk that maybe that company is not able to return that money to you later. So that's why you need a premium for it, which is default risk premium. Also you need a premium for inflation, because through time there will be inflation, prices will go up, and so money will lose value. And also you invested it for 5 years, so you are giving your money for 5 years, getting it stuck for 5 years, and so you need a premium for that as well. And hence this difference will cater for all the premiums, or should cater for all the premiums, assuming there is no other cash flow. So for simplicity, assuming there is no other cash flow, this should cater for all the premiums, right? And what is the baseline? I mean, why do you have premiums? Or how do you calculate that required rate of return, or how do you calculate this required interest amount? You calculate it by looking at the opportunity cost. So what would you do is that you will find out that if I do not invest this 800 today with this bond, but if rather I invest it into something else, then what is the return that I am getting on that particular investment? And based on that, you will come up with this required return. So your required return will be based on opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is the next best option foregone. That is the investment which you are foregoing. So your required return will be dependent on the option which you are foregoing. And how do you calculate it? You calculate it by what you are foregoing. You are foregoing a risk-free investment. So you take real risk-free rate. What you are foregoing? You are foregoing inflation. If you consume it today, you can buy goods for a lower price, so you get a premium for this. What you are foregoing? You could have invested into a risk-free asset, but with this you are taking a risk, so default risk premium. And what you are foregoing? You could use this money in 5 years, but instead you are getting it stuck in 5 years, so you need a maturity premium. So that means all this working is basically to find out the opportunity cost, that what is my opportunity cost, that if I do not make this investment, where else can I invest it? So if in market you have high rates available, you will want high rate on this. If in market you have low rates available, you will want a lower rate, because your opportunity cost is lower. So that means your return on any investment would depend on, would be or will be affected by the opportunity cost, or the returns or investments available in the market. So your required rate of return or required rate of interest would depend on the opportunity cost, or all these premiums. So opportunity cost is what you could have earned had you not invested in that particular investment. And your required rate of return should account for all the premiums: real risk-free interest rate, inflation premium, default risk premium, maturity premium. One of the premiums that we missed out is liquidity premium. So let's discuss this as well. What is liquidity premium? So let's say that you have invested into an asset, and you have bought an asset for $100, and you think that its price will go up in future. Or let's say that you have a bond and you bought it for $100, and you think that in future it will go to a price of $110. So that means you will benefit. But how will you benefit? In order to benefit, you will need to sell it. When you go to sell it, there needs to be some buyer. So only if there is a buyer, then you will be able to book your return. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to book your return. So that means in order for you to benefit from this investment, there needs to be a buyer when you are a seller, and there needs to be a seller when you are a buyer. So if you are easily able to find out a buyer and easily able to find out a seller when you are buying, then that means you can easily do that trade and get the return. Otherwise, if the number of buyers and sellers is very less, or if it is difficult to find a buyer or difficult to find a seller, then that means you need a premium for that as well. And that premium is known as liquidity premium. That is ability to liquidate asset, selling or buying on both the positions. So if there are large number of buyers and sellers, liquidity premium will be lower. If there is a small number of buyers and sellers, liquidity premium will be higher. So these all are the premiums that you will require in order to arrive at the required rate of return. Required rate of return is the return that you require from a particular investment. And this can be different for different investors. Different investors can have different required returns based on their assumptions of future. And different products or different assets would have different required rate of returns. So it will depend on all these premiums and all these risks. Any questions so far up till here? Okay, so moving on, here is an example from curriculum. So you have 5 investments. These are the maturities. This is the liquidity. This is default risk. This is interest rate. So first basic question is, why is investment 2's interest rate higher compared to 1? So investment 2 has a rate of 2.5%. One has a rate of 2%. So why do investment 2 have a higher rate? Because its liquidity is lower. As liquidity is lower, it would ask for higher rate or higher premium. What is the default risk premium? So from these investments, looking at these 5 investments, what is the default risk premium? What is the amount of default risk premium?
Amount of the default risk.
Percentage. What is the percentage of default risk premium?
4.5.
4.5. How?
Default risk is higher in the fifth investment.
Right. And
6.5 minus 2.
But then their liquidity is also different and their maturity is also different. So there will be premiums for total premium is 4.5, but some of that would be for liquidity, some of that would be for maturity, and some of that would be for default risk. So you need to subtract those as well. So anyone with the answer?
4. Because the liquidity in investment 2 and 5 is the same.
Liquidity in 2 and 5 is the same, but maturity is different, so there needs to be a maturity premium as well. Okay, so you will break it down into components. So first of all, if you compare investment 1 and 2, then 1 has an interest rate of 2%, 2 has an interest rate of 2.5%, which means whole of this premium is due to liquidity. Default risk is same, maturity is same, so that means all of this premium is due to liquidity, as all else is same. So that means liquidity premium is 0.5%. Now I will compare an investment with high default risk with an investment with low default risk, and I would try to come up with 2 investments which have all else the same. So if I look into it, there is no other investment which have maturity and liquidity as same. So that means I will have to do some compromise and would have to select some other investment. But which is the nearest similar investment? So the nearest similar one is investment 4, in which maturity is same, liquidity is different, default risk is different. So if I look into it, investment 4 has an interest rate of 4%. Investment 5 has the same maturity, so there should be no maturity premium. Investment 5 has lower liquidity. If it has lower liquidity, that means investment 5 should offer a lower liquidity. Lower liquidity, so it means that it should offer a higher liquidity premium. So as 5 has a lower liquidity, a premium needs to be added. And what is that premium? We calculated from 1 and 2, it is 0.5%. So we have accounted for this as well. That means the value or the return on investment 5 should be 4.5%. But then again, there is a difference for default risk as well. So as it has a higher default risk, there needs to be a default risk premium as well. So if I add default risk premium, then it should make up the interest rate for fifth investment, which is 6.5%. So that means if I take investment 4, add liquidity premium, add default risk premium, then it should give me the return on or interest rate for investment number 5, which is 6.5%. So if I work it out, default risk premium will be 6.5 minus 4 minus 0.5, which is 2%. So on the face of it, if you are just asked about default risk premium, it might look difficult, or it might look that you do not have enough data to calculate it. But then again, you have to see through the lines and see through the data to find out that what actually is available and how can you make it used to arrive at your answer. So 2% should be your default risk premium. Any confusion so far up till here? Anyone? Okay, so you should be able to make the best use of data in order to find out the desired result or desired outcome. Next question is, what can be the range for the interest rate on investment 3? So what is can be the minimum or maximum interest rate for this investment, which is R3? What can be the maximum or minimum value for R3? Sorry, liquidity premium was 0.5%, default risk premium was 2%. So what should be the minimum value, minimum return or maximum return on investment number 3? Right. Yes, so these two are exactly same. Only difference is 2 and 7. That means its return needs to be the same as 2 but has to be higher for maturity premium. So that means R3 needs to be higher than 2.5%. So at least greater than 2.5%. So minimum is 2.5%. And what can be the maximum value? What is it? 4%. How? Sorry? Maturity is different. 8 years and 7 years. Yes, closer to 8. So, but then again, you need to find out the, so baseline was 2.5%. So if you look into it, this 7 has a low liquidity and low default risk premium. So if I compare it to 8, then lower liquidity means the same. So no premium for this. So its return should be the same as 6.5. If I look at the default risk, it is low. If the default risk is low, then the return should be also be lower. So what is the default risk premium? Default risk premium which we calculated was 2%. So that means if it is 6.5, then it should be 4.5% if everything else is same. So we have accounted for default risk premium. It should be 4.5 if everything else is same. But then again, it has higher maturity. So that means there needs to be a maturity adjustment as well. So as investment number 3 has lower maturity, so it should have a lower return. So that means otherwise, had it been 8, if the maturity was 8 years, then the return would have been 4.5%. But as it has a 7-year maturity, return should be lower than 4.5%. So this is the range within which we should have the return, greater than 2.5 and lower than 4.5%. Any problem or questions so far till here? Okay, so moving on to cash flow calculation, and first we will start with future value. So what is future value? Simply, if you have a present value of $100, for example, and if you are told that the return or the required rate of return or the interest rate is 10%, future value can simply be calculated by multiplying 100 with 1 plus r to the power t, or present value multiplied by 1 plus r to the power t. So in this example, it will be 100 multiplied by 1.1 to the power, let's say that time period is 1 year. So 1. This will be your future value, correct? Anyone having any problem? Okay, but this is not how you will do it on exam. Or let's say that your present value is $100 and your rate is 10% and your time period is, let's say, 6 months, then your future value will be same formula, 100 into 1.1 to the power 0.5. Why 0.5? 6 months, 6 divided by 12 is 0.5. But this is a simply how you calculate future value. But you wouldn't get as simple a question as this one in exam, and so you will have to save time, and so you wouldn't be doing it using this formula, but instead you will make use of your calculator and do it through your financial calculator. So how do you do this from financial calculator? So this is your financial calculator, how it this is how it looks like. this specific line is, sorry, this specific line of buttons or row of buttons is for time value of money. And even in Excel, for those who have been into financial modeling, or who have used Excel at work or in studies, would know that this same time value of money these same time value of money variables are also used in Excel. So in Excel, again, you have a formula known as equals to PV equals to FV equals to PMT equals to rate. So you have these same variables being used in Excel as well. Those same variables are used by financial calculator as well. So it works exactly the same way as Excel works. So you have a series of buttons for time value of money. This N is number of periods. IY is interest rate slash yield, which is your interest rate or discount rate. PV is present value. PMT is payment, which we will use later. FV is future value. So if you are told that present value is $100, and if you are told that number of time period is, for example, 1 year, and if you are told that for example interest rate is 10%, and you have to calculate future value, how do you actually calculate future value? You input these three numbers into your calculator and compute future value. How do you do this? So in your financial calculator, first thing is press CE/C so that you clear the screen. Once you have cleared the screen, then clear any numbers which are stored within this within these values or against these variables. And how do you do this? You use shift and clear work. What is clear work? So if you look into these buttons, there is some text written on the button, and there is some text written in yellow on the top of the button. So this yellow function is performed by first pressing this second button and then pressing the this button. So if I press second and then C, it will perform this CLR work function. If I press second and then 7, it will perform this data function. If I press second and then 4, it will perform this function. So this is how it is performed. So this CLR work means clear work. It will clear your memory from time value of money. So if you do second and CE/C, it will clear time value of money variable. So it will store 0 in all of these values. If you had stored anything earlier, that would get removed. So second and clear work. Now you move on and you start entering values. So remember how you enter in financial calculator is first press the number, that is do 100, and when you see 100 on screen, then you press N. And when you press N, this 100 gets stored into N. So remember, you do not need to press N first and then the number. If you do that, then it will go wrong. First put the number on the screen and then press N, and it will get stored into N. Now do not press N again when you see any other number on the screen. Just press clear work and come back to the screen. Now IY is your interest rate. So press 10 or put 10 on your screen. Make sure you put it in percentage terms. Do not put it in decimal. Your calculator would know that you are inputting it in percentage. So press 10 and then press I/Y. When you do this, this 10 gets stored into IY. Then again clear CE, and then when you have to input present value. Now recall from your Excel working, when in Excel you are putting in a present value, you put it as negative to get a positive future value, and when you are calculating present value, you put future value as negative when you have to get a present value. Why? Because it works as per loan amortization schedule. It assumes that this present value is an outflow and what you are receiving in future is an inflow. So that's why if you are putting in present value as positive, it will give you a negative FV. If you put it in as negative, it will give you a positive FV. So put present value as minus 100, not 100. And how do you put in minus 100? Again, do not just do minus and 100, but instead put 100, write 100 on your screen, and once you see 100, press this plus minus button. When you press it, it will change it to minus 100. Otherwise, if you do minus 100, then it will subtract 100 from whatever number was there on the screen. So press 100 put 100 and then press plus minus button and it will change it to minus 100. Once you see minus 100 on the screen, press PV and it gets stored into present value. Payment, we are not into NVT pay. We have not discussed NVT payments as yet. So this is 0. So press 0, press PMT. It will store 0 in PMT. Then moving on, future value, it is something that you have to calculate. So how do you calculate? Press this compute button, press FV and it will give you the future value. So one second. N is 1 year and PV is minus 100, IY is 10, payment is 0. And when you compute your future value, it should come out as 110. So compute future value, it will come out as 110. Any problem so far? Okay. Similarly, if you have to calculate present value, you put in all other numbers and compute PV. If you have to calculate rate, you put in all other numbers and compute rate. So these are 4 variables. From these 4 variables, if you have 3 with you, you can find out 4 easily using your calculator. Another thing to note about calculator is that once you have put in the numbers, if now you want to check that what is there in N, how do you check it? You cannot just press N, because if you press N, whatever is there on screen will get saved into N. So how do you use it? Find out what is stored in these numbers? You find that out using a button known as recall button. So this RCL means recall. So you press RCL, you press N, and it will show you whatever is stored in N. You press RCL again, press IY, it will show you whatever is stored in IY. So you can use this button to see what is actually stored in this, all these variables. Again, if you want to clear it, press second, press clear work, and it will remove all the numbers which were stored there. Clear work wouldn't actually clear it. There is another button. Yeah, so clear work wouldn't clear this TVM. It will clear data register but not TVM. For clearing TVM, you need to clear TVM, CLR TVM. So you press second and press this CVM and it will clear CVM and it will clear all the numbers there. Now if you recall N, it will show as 0. If you recall IY, it will show as 0. Everything will be shown as 0 because you have cleared everything from there. So this clear TVM will clear out the TVM numbers. This will be used for data register, which we will do later. So this is how you do it using your calculator. Make sure that you get the calculator as soon as possible if you do not have it, so that it is easier. So far we did a very basic example in which we had $100 and we were calculating future value. Rate was 10%. This 10% is known as stated annual rate. This is known as stated annual rate, and time was 1 year. Now this is stated annual rate, and we assume that compounding is annual. What does it mean? We assume that after every year you get a 10% return and it will continue for whatever period of time it is. Let's say for 5 years or 2 years. So this meant that you will get 10% at the end of first year, then you will again get 10% at the end of next year. So annual compounding means if I invest $100 as of today, I will get 10% return at the end of first year, which means 100 into 1.1, which becomes 110. And now I will reinvest this 110 and I will again get 10% return on this 110. So it becomes should be 121 something multiplied by 1.1. So 121. So at the end of 2 years. So this means that compounding is annual. That is, after at the end of every year I get the return compounded. If I tell you that compounding is not annual but it is semi-annual, it means you get a return after every 6 months. It does not mean that 10% is a 6-month rate. 10% is an annual rate, is a stated annual rate. But how your return is calculated is that your return is based on 6-month return. That your return compounds after every 6 months. So if I tell you that your return, you are getting a return after 1 year and then you are reinvesting, Or if I give you another option that you get the return in 6 months and then you reinvest for another 6 months, so which one is a better option? So if you are getting a return quickly, is it better, or if you are getting a delayed return, is that better? Getting it quickly is better because then you can reinvest it and get more return out of it. That means 6 month return should not be the same as 1 year return. So in stated terms it will be same, that is stated rate is 10%, but the actual return that you are getting out of it should not be the same or will be different. And if that actual return is different, then your future value will also be different. So that means if compounding changes, your return will, or your actual return or your future or present value will change. So for example, if I tell you that this is a semi-annual compounding, or if I tell you that this rate is semi-annually compounded, it means that you get a return after every 6 months, which means there will be 4 periods: 6 months, 1 year, and then 18 months, and then 2 years. Every 6 months you will get a return. Now the second question is that what is the return that you get every 6 months? So this rate is annual rate. So what will be 6 month rate? 6 month rate should be 10 divided by 12 multiplied by 6. So this rate is for 12 months. So for 6 month rate will be 10 divided by 12 multiplied by 6. So rate should be 10 divided by 12 multiplied by 6, which is 5%. That means every 6 months you should get a 5% return. So in first year you should get a 5% return. When you get a 5% return, your $100 becomes 105. Then you reinvest this 505 for another 6 months, and then again you get a 5% return and it will become 110.25. And then you reinvest it and it will become 115.76, and you reinvest it and it will become 121.55. So if you look into it, in annual compounding you are receiving 121, in semi-annual you are receiving 121.55, and if I go for quarterly compounding it will even increase, and if I go for daily or continuous compounding it will keep on increasing. So that means changing compounding can actually change your return. So if you have semi-annual compounding, how do you calculate the future value? So you will use same formula that we did earlier, which is future value equals present value multiplied by 1 plus r to the power t. So same formula will be used. Only difference is that this rate and this t will change. So present value is 100. Now you multiply it by 1 plus r. R is 10% for annual rate, but for 6 months it would be 5%. So 1.05. And if I am getting return every 6 months, and if I am investing for 2 years, how many periods would I get return for? 4 periods. That is 2 into 2. There are 12 months in 1 year, so there are 2 semi-annual periods in 1 year. So 2 into 2 would be 4. So I am investing it for 4 years, and if you do this, you should get same answer, which is 1.05 to the power 4 multiplied by 100, which is 121.55. But then again, this is not how you will do it on exam. You wouldn't have to do this calculation, but you will do it using your calculator. So again, going back to your calculator, how do you do this on your calculator? You again input the same variables. So first you clear your TVM. So second and clear TVM would clear the TVM. And now you will enter N. N was 2 years, but it is semi-annual compounding. As it is semi-annual compounding, number of periods would be 2 into 2, which is 4. So you press 4, press N, it gets stored into N. Then you move on with the rate. Rate was 10%, but you have taken 4 periods. So for 4 periods, rate per period would be 5%. So 10 divided by 2, which is 5%. So you press 5, you press IY, and it gets stored there. PV, what is PV? So PV was $100. So you put 100, press plus minus, and it gets stored in PV. Then PMT 0. So you press 0, press PMT, it gets stored in PMT. And now you have to calculate FV. So you press compute, press FV, and your FV gets computed. and the answer should be 121.55. Is it the answer? 121.55. So compute FV and it should be your answer, 121.55. Any problem so far? Okay, so if let's say this is not a semi-annual compounding, and if I tell you this is a quarterly compounding, then what will be the number of periods for 2 years? There are 4 quarters in 1 year, so 2-year period would be 2 into 4, which is 8. And what will be the interest rate? 10 divided by 4, 2.5. So there are 4 quarters in 1 year, so for full year rate is 10%, so you divide 10 by 4 and 2.5%. And again you plug in same numbers, you calculate FV would be a higher amount. So if you calculate it, what is it? It should be a higher amount than 121.55. 121.84. So that is a higher amount, and which makes sense. Why? Because this is a quarterly compounding. Then if I tell you that this is not even a quarterly compounding, this is a monthly compounding. So this will be 2 into 12, which is 24, and this will be 10 divided by 12. 2.67 should be the answer. 0.83, 0.83%. And when you plug this in and you calculate FV should now be even higher, approximately near to 122, or maybe higher than 122, higher than 122, I think 122.1 or 122.2, something like that. So on baseline, annual compounding gives you 121, and similarly semi-annual compounding gave you 121.55, quarterly gave you 121.84, and monthly gave you 122.2. Maybe there is some it should be 122.0, 122.1, and maybe percentage, there is some problem with percentage. Okay, but that is the idea. That's how you do it. So here is an example which says you invest $1 million at 8%. How much will you have at the end of 3 years? So this means N is 3 for annual compounding. Rate is 8%. PV is minus 1 million, and FV is, you have to compute, payment is 0. So you plug in these numbers, compute FV, you have the answer for annual compounding. Then if you are told it is semi-annual compounding, you change this from 3 to 6, you change it from 8 to 4. You plug the numbers in, you get the answer for future value. If you are told it is quarterly, you change it from 3 to 12. 3 years quarterly compounding is 3 into 4 is 12, and you do it, change it to 2%, and you calculate it future value, you will get future value. If it is monthly compounding, you change it to 36, you change it to 8 divided by 12. 8 divided by 12 would be 0.67%, and you compute FE and you will have your future value. So that means as long as you know how to use calculator, these questions should just only take 5 seconds or 10 seconds, and you should be able to come up with the answer. Once you have used calculator for a sufficient period of time. Initially it will take longer time, but as you get used to of using this calculator, it should be done in 10 to 20 seconds max. Your calculation should not take more than that. Okay, so here is another example, future value of a lump sum. So they say, and so this is just a basic example, this is how questions would appear. So questions would be based on some case or scenario or something like that, but still the calculation would be as simple as what we have done here. A pension fund manager estimates that his corporate sponsor will make a $10 million contribution 5 years from now. The rate of return on plan assets has been estimated at 9% per year. The pension fund manager wants to calculate the future value of this contribution 15 years from now, which is the date at which the funds will be distributed to retirees. What is the future value? So he wants to calculate the future value at the end of 15th year. So this is a pension fund, and they tell you that corporate sponsor, which is the company with which you are for which you are working maybe. So corporate sponsor will make $10 million contribution 5 years from now. That means contribution will be made here. And then they are telling you that this contribution will continue to give a 9% return per year. The pension fund manager, and after 9% return per year, pension fund manager wants to calculate future value of this contribution 15 years from now. So he wants to calculate future value at 15 years. So that means you have to calculate future value of this 10 million at 15th year. So this means your N should be 10, because the number of periods which you are taking it forward is 10. So N should be 15 minus 5, which is 10, and present value should be 10 million negative. Why I am putting it as negative? Because in calculator you will need to put it as negative 10 million, and your rate of return is 9%. Your payment is 0. FV you can compute. So if you plug in these numbers, N being 10, rate being IY being 9%, present value being minus 10 million, payment being 0, and compute FV would come out to be 23.67 million. So it should be 23.67 million. That is, in 10 years time, this 10 million will become 23.67 million at the end of 15th year. So as long as you know to use calculator, and as long as you are able to interpret the question, that what is being asked in the question, you should be able to do these questions. This should be very basic and easy. Another example is continuing with the CD example. Suppose your bank offers you a, so this is a different example. There was a prerequisite, that's why they said continuing with the CD example. Suppose your bank offers you a CD with a 2-year maturity. So cash deposit instrument with a 2-year maturity. Stated annual interest rate of 8% compounded quarterly, and a feature allowing investment of the interest at the same interest rate. You decide to invest $10,000. What will the CD be worth at maturity? So that means today you are investing $10,000. So your investment today is $10,000. The return that you are getting on it is 8%. This is an stated annual rate, and it is compounded quarterly. Yes. So what is the return per quarter? It should be 8 divided by 4, which is 2%. Number of periods is that you are investing it for 2 years, but as you are taking rate for quarterly period, the number of years should also be adjusted for quarterly period. So there are 4 quarters in a year, so it should be 2 into 4, which is 8. And how do you payment is 0. How do you calculate FV? FV is simply you plug in minus 10,000, you plug in the number of periods as 8, plug in rate as 2%, plug in 1171.6. 1171.6. So 11,716.6 is the future value. What did they ask you? You decided to invest. What will be the CD be worth at maturity? That's what they asked. That what will be its value at maturity? So value at maturity will be 11,716.6. 11,716.6. Any problem, confusion so far up till here? Okay, so far we discussed semi-annual, quarterly, monthly compounding, or we can go on to daily compounding as well. If now you are told that compounding is neither semi-annual nor quarterly nor monthly, but it is actually, or nor daily, it is actually a continuous compounding. So if it is a continuous compounding, that means you cannot use a specific number of days. You cannot use 365 days. You cannot use 12 months. You cannot use 4 quarters or whatever. So it is continuously changing. Like for example, in terms of a stock price continues to change. So it is changing every moment. So if it is some $100 in morning, it may be $102 in afternoon, or maybe $99 in the end. So you cannot even wait for one day for it to change. It will change instantaneously. That means it is changing every moment. So if it is changing every moment, then the function that is used to track changes of a change happening every moment, that function is known as exponential function. Exponential function generates a distribution of variable from the statistics that it generates, so a distribution of variable which is continuously changing or which follows a random walk. So exponential function can be used to come up with the future value because it will capture all the continuous changes. So if a return is continuously compounded, we use a different formula, and that formula is future value equals present value into e to the power r t. R is your stated annual rate, t is your time period in years. So for example, if I tell you that there is a stock or any asset with a present value of $100 and the stated annual rate is, let's say, 5%, and I tell you that it is continuously compounded. So if it is continuously compounded and if I ask you what is the future value after, let's say, 6 months, how will you do it? You will use this formula, that is future value equals $100 PV multiplied by e to the power RT. R is 5%, so you take it in decimal, 0.05 multiplied by t. T is 6 months. So this t is in years. 6 month means 6 divided by 12, which is 0.5. That means 0.5 years. So you multiply 0.5 into 0.05. You take it as power of e, and then you multiply that by 100, and that should give you your future value. Again, the question is that how do you do this on your financial calculator? So it wouldn't be as in the same way as you do it on your normal calculator. So remember, in financial calculator, like you did with N, you did with IY, you did with PV, first you enter the number and then you press the function to get it stored. Similarly here, you will have to first put in this number and then press function E to get the answer for e to the power this particular number. How do you do this? So you know it is 0.05 into 0.5. So first you do it in your calculator, that is you multiply 0.05 into 0.5. So you multiply 0.05 into 0.5, and when you do this, you will get 0.025. So that means now you have to calculate e to the power 0.025. So once you see this 0.025 written on your screen, what you only need to do is you need to use the function e to the power x. How do you do this? So if you look into ln button, variable on the top of ln is e to the power x. This means that if you press second and that press ln, it will do the same as e to the power x. So once you see 0.025 written on your screen, next step is that you press second and press ln, and it should give you e to the power 0.025, which is 1.025. See, this should be your e to the power RT, and then you multiply it by present value, which is 100. So it will be 102.53. This is your answer. So in financial calculator, first you calculate the power separately, then you do second ln so that you get e to the power that particular number, and then you multiply that by present value to arrive at the future value. So that's how you do it in continuous compounding. So here is an example. What is the answer? You invest $10,000 at 10% compounded annually. How much will you have after 2 years? What's the answer for future value? how much will you have after 12 years? Something like 12 to 1 4.02. So how do you do this? Simply first you calculate, so it should be PV into e to the power RT. So first you calculate R into T. R is 10%, 0.1, and T is 2 years. So 0.1 into 2 would give you 0.2, and then you take it as power of E, and when you take 0.2 as power of E, it should give you 1.2214, and then you multiply e to the power RT. This is the 1.2214. You multiply it by present value, which is 10,000, to get this answer, which is 12,240. This should be your answer for future value compound of an amount compounded annually, or compounded continuously, sorry. So this is about compounding and future value. So we discussed that if you have annual compounding and if you have a semi-annual compounding, your return will be higher than annual compounding, and if you have quarterly compounding, your return will be even higher, and if you have let's say monthly compounding or daily compounding, return would be even higher, and if you have continuous compounding, return would be even higher. So that means this stated rate, let's say 10%, which was in given as 10% in previous example. So this stated rate does not mean that this is your actual return. Your actual return can very well be different from the stated rate depending on the compounding. So stated rate would give you the same return, actual return, if it is annual compounding, but will give you a higher actual return if it is semi-annual, and higher actual return if quarterly, much higher if monthly, and the highest if continuously compounded. So now the question is that how do you calculate that actual return or actual rate? That actual return or actual rate is known as effective annual return or effective annual rate. So this 10% is SAR, stated annual rate, and the actual return that I get is known as effective annual rate or effective annual return, EAR. So now the question is that how do you actually calculate this EAR? So simply speaking, if you are told that SAR is 10% and it is semi-annually compounded. So if it is semi-annually compounded, that means return for every 6 months would be 5%. That is annual divided by 2. And that means number of periods in 1 year will be 2. So if I invest $1 today, what will be the future? If I invest $1 today, what will be the future value? Future value will simply be 1 multiplied by 1 plus R to the power 2. So that means future value after 1 year would be 1.05 squared, which is 1.1025. So that means if I invest $1 today, it will become 1.1025 at the end of first year. So what is my return? My return from this investment would be future value minus present value. So total return that I have earned is 1.1025 minus 1, which is 10.25%. So that means if my rate is semi-annually compounded, my effective annual rate is 10.25%. The return that I actually get after 1 year is 10.25%. Similarly, if I have to convert SAR into semi-annual rate, I can do this using this formula. I can do using this method. If I have to convert 10-year SAR into effective rate for quarterly compounding, then I take n as 4 and I take 2.5% of rate, and when I do this calculation, 1.025 to the power 4, it should give me the answer for future value of this rate, which is 1.025 to the power 4, which is 1.1038, and when I subtract 1 from it, it should be 10.38%. So for quarterly compounding, I can change these variables. For monthly, I can change this again. I will use 12 and 10 divided by 12. And for continuous, there will be a different method. For discrete compounding, monthly, daily, and all, I can use this methodology. So what am I actually doing? I am calculating a future value and subtracting investment from it. What is my investment? 1. So which means I am calculating a future value and subtracting 1. If I calculate future value, subtract 1, that should give me the EAR. And how do I calculate future value? Present into 1 plus r to the power t. Present value is 1. So I write it or not, that doesn't make us difference. So that means my future value is simply 1 plus r to the power t minus. So how am I getting EAR? I am getting EAR by doing 1 plus r to the power t minus 1. What is this r that I am using? This r is stated rate divided by number of periods in 1 year. So that means I am simply doing 1 plus r divided by nm whatever to the power. What is this t? T is again the number of periods minus 1. So that means if I have to calculate EAR, I can simply use this formula, which is 1 plus r divided by n to the power n minus 1, to get the answer for EAR, or to convert stated annual rate into EAR. So how am I arriving at this formula? I am arriving at this formula using this concept. So either you remember this formula or you remember this concept, so that you are able to convert SAR into EAR, or you use your calculator. So how do you use your calculator? So doing the same example using your calculator. So you can use these same variables, that is 10 divided by 4, 2.5, and in 1 year you have 4 period, 1 into 4, number of period 4, and you can plug it in your calculator. You can take present value as $1. So 4 in N, then 2.5 in IY, and then minus 1 in PV, 0 in payment, and then you compute FE. When you compute FE, it will give you 1.1038. So you compute FE, minus 1 will give you the rate, 10.38%. So these are all the methods by which you can convert SAR into EAR. As long as you know the concept, you should be able to do it in any particular method. But key is you should be able to convert SAR into any of these compounding rates. So if you have to convert SAR into any of the into EAR, you use this formula: 1 plus annual stated annual rate, divided by number of periods, which will give you periodic interest rate, that is 6 month, quarter, or whatever, to the power m, which is your periodicity, which is number of periods in a year, minus 1, which should give you your EAR. Any problem so far? Okay, moving on to continuous compounding. How do you get EAR for continuous compounding? Same methodology will be used. So what is your FE? FE is PV into e to the power RT. So if I tell you that you are investing $1 as of today, and I tell you that stated rate is 10%, so you are making an investment, and you have to find out return in 1 year. So what is FE? FE is 1 multiplied by e to the power r, which is 0.1, multiplied by t, which is 1. So this will be your FE. And if I ask you about rate, rate will be FE minus PV. That is future value that you have accumulated minus present value. So 1.10517. So it should be 1.10517 minus 1. And it should be 10.517%. So that means effective annual rate is 10.517%. How did I do this? Same methodology. I calculated future value for 1 year, and then I subtracted present value, and the rate that I got is actually the rate. Is actually the actual rate or effective annual return that I am getting on this particular continuous compounding. So same methodology use. If I have to further simplify formula, what is PV? PV is 1. So if I write it or not doesn't make any difference. What is T? T is 1. So I write it or not doesn't make difference. So simply what I have done is I have taken e to the power r to calculate Fe, and whatever I subtract, I will subtract PV. What is PV? PV is 1. So that means e to the power r minus 1 should give me the effective annual rate. So this formula can be further simplified into e to the power r minus 1. So either remember this formula or remember the methodology, whatever suits you. You should be able to convert SAR into effective annual rate for continuous compounding, quarterly, semi-annual, whatever it is. Make sure you are able to do it. Any problem so far? So far we have talked about only one cash flow, that is calculating the future value of one cash flow, which is very simple. Now we are moving on to calculating the future value of a series of cash flows. That is, for example, a cash flow happening every year, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I tell you there is a cash flow which happens every year, let's say $100, then either this cash flow can stay constant throughout the life or it can change, right? It can be either 100 throughout life, or it can be 100, then 50, then 120, then 40, whatever it is. So both would have different calculation. So first we will go with the constant cash flow assumption. So remember, when a constant cash flow happens throughout a period of time, at the fixed intervals, like for example after every 1 year, after every 1 month, or after every quarter, whatever, that series of cash flow is known as NVT. So NVT is series of constant cash flows happening at the fixed interval of time. So this is known as NVT. So now we will be talking about calculating future value of NVT. Within NVT there can be two cases. So either first cash flow happens at the end of the year, or it happens today at the start. If it happens at the end of the year, that is the general case or usual case, and that is known as ordinary NVT. Ordinary NVT is the one in which cash flow happens at the end of the period. So if you enter into it today, first cash flow will be received or paid after 1 year, and then after second year, third year, and so on. There is another type which is known as NVT due. NVT due is the one in which cash flow is paid in advance or received in advance. So if this cash flow happens at the start of the year, that is at t is equals to 0, then it is known as NVT due. So which means in ordinary NVT, if I talk about today, or in ordinary NVT, I will be receiving 5 payments in future. But if it is NVT due, I will receive 1 today and then 4 in future. So if I have to calculate future value of all these amount, how do I do this? I calculate future value of this 100, then I calculate future value of this 100, and then I calculate future value of this 100, and then I calculate future value of this 100. I will calculate future value of all these hundreds, add them up, and that will give me the future value of this NVT at the end of 5th year. That is one way of doing it. Obviously it will take a long time. Second way is that I use the NVT formula. So there is an NVT formula which you can use, and in that formula you can just plug in the numbers and you can find out the future value or present value. That is another way, but again I will have to put in numbers and use the formula and remember or memorize the formula. And that is a third way in which CFA curriculum requires you to perform the task, or in which you should be doing it as a CFA student or as in your exam on CFA. So how do you do this? You do that again using a financial calculator. So in your financial calculator, again you make use of this series of buttons or row of buttons, which is time value of money buttons. And how do you actually do it? So N is your number of periods. So for example, if I tell you it is a 5-year NVT, you press 5 and press N, it will get stored in N. Then there will be certain discount rate. Let's say that is 10%. So you press 10 and press IY, it gets stored in IY. Then PV, there is no PV because it is a series of payments. So there is no one cash flow as of today. There is a series of cash flows. So no PV, PV is 0. Then you have payment. Payment is that payment which is being continuously paid or consistently paid. That is 100 in this case. Again, if you plug it in as minus, you will get a positive, or if you plug it in as in PV, you will get a negative. But for now, just plug it in as 100 so that FE is positive. So this payment, which is 100, and then so if you plug it in positive, answer would be negative. If you plug it in negative, answer would be positive. But just put it as it is, or 100 or minus, whatever, answer will remain be the same. FE you have to calculate. So how do you calculate? So simply you plug in 5, 10%, 0, or minus 100 or 100, whatever, and then you compute FE. And when you compute FE, answer should be 5, 10, 0, 100. So answer should be 610.5. So try plugging PMT as minus 100, then you get 610.5. Answer should be 610.5. So if you plug it in as minus, answer would be 610.5. If you plug it in as negative, answer would be minus 610.5. Only minus or plus would be different, but answer should be same. So 610.5. So that is the answer that you get for future value of this NVD. And your calculator always assumes that this is an NVD, ordinary NVD. It is not an NVD due. So it will assume that first cash flow is being paid as at the end of first year. Now there can be a question in which you are told that this is an ordinary this is an NVT due, that is first cash flow happens at the start of the year. So if that is the case, then you need to tell your calculator that you are giving some data for NVT due. How do you do this? So you change your calculator to begin mode. Begin mode means that it will assume that cash flow is happening at the beginning of the period. So how do you change it to begin mode? It should be second set. So press second, press set, second begin, press second, press BGN. So on the top of payment you see BGN, which means begin. So second begin, and then second set. So second begin, second set. When you do this, you will see BGN written on your calculator screen on the top. This means now your calculator is on NVT due mode. Now if you do the same calculation, calculator would calculate FE based on the assumption that it is an NVT due. If you again want to change it, again use the same thing. Second BGN, second set. Second BGN, second set. This BGN will get removed from the screen, which means that now your calculator is again on ordinary NVT mode. So this is how you should be able to change it. Any questions so far? So this is the NVT with a definite period of life. If there is an NVT which continues forever, in which there is no definite period, there is a constant cash flow happening forever, that is known as perpetuity. Perpetuity is that NVT which does not have any life, or which have infinite life, or which continues forever. And present value of perpetuity, remember, is payment divided by return. So you just divide payment by discount rate, that gives you the present value of perpetuity. So I tell you that you are paid $100 every year, and I asked you what is the value of this present value of this payment, and I tell you that this payment will be made forever. So what is the present value? If it has indefinite life, it should be 100 divided by rate. If rate is 10%, it should be 100 divided by 0.1, which is $1,000. So that means if anything continues forever, I divide it by rate, by the rate, and I get the present value. This is the simple formula for present value. Divided by payment, divide payment by rate. So remember this formula as well. This is important. Okay, so there is a question. Do this question and find out what the answer is. Suppose your company's defined contribution retirement plan allows you to invest up to 20,000 per year. You plan to invest 20,000 per year in a stock index fund for the next 30 years. Historically, this fund has earned 9% per year on average. Assuming that you actually earn 9% a year, so you will be earning 9% a year, that is the assumption. How much money will you have available for retirement after making the last payment? So you will be making payment for 30 years and they are asking you how much would you have accumulated at 30th year. So that means they are asking you actually about future value of all these payments which you are making, and you are making a payment per year 20,000 per year and you continue it for next 30 year. And if no details are given as to being an annuity due or annuity, ordinary annuity, assume it is an ordinary annuity.
272615.
Which means 2.7 million approximately. So simply your payment is 20,000 and in calculator you can put it as negative. Your rate is 9% and is 30 and you have to calculate future value. PV is 0. So if I plug in 30, then I plug in 9, then I plug in PV which is 0 and I plug in payment which is 20,000 and I calculate future value, it comes out to be something different. Recall N 30 by 9%, PV 0, PMT is 20,000. PMT is 20,000. It comes out to be 2.726 million. 2726151 actually. 0.77 means if you round it off, it should be 1. So this is your answer for future value of NVT. Any problem so far? So that is about future value. Similarly, you can also calculate present values. How do you calculate present value? Using the same formula. So if future value is equals to present value into 1 plus r to the power t, then present value will be future value divided by 1 plus r to the power t. Similarly, for continuous compounding, if future value is equals to e to present value into e to the power rt, then future present value will be equal to future value divided by e to the power rt, or I can convert it into future value into e to the power minus rt. This is how you calculate it. In your calculator, so far you were inputting present value. Now you can input future and compute present. So for example, this is the question. An insurance company has issued a guaranteed investment contract that promises to pay $100,000 in 6 years. Now it promises to pay after 6 years, means this is a future value, and number of periods is 6. With an 8% required 8% return rate. So this means the rate is 8%. What amount of money must the insurer invest today? So they are asking that how much should be the investment today to accumulate 100,000 after 6 years. So that means they are asking you about today's money, which is present value. So simply you input all the numbers, 6 and being 6, rate being 8%, PV being 0, payment being 0, and FV being 100,000, and you compute PV, which is 63,017. 63,017. If you plug in future value as positive, PV will come out as negative. If you plug in this as negative, it will come out as positive. So it shouldn't be a problem. So another key point to remember is that as you go farther in the time, money will lose more and more value. So if you have if your cash flow is happening at a farther period, your present value will be lower. If I take same cash flow at 5 year or same cash flow as 10 year, value of 10 years cash flow as of today will be lower. And second key point is discount rate, that if discount rate increases, present value will be lower, obviously. Similarly, you can calculate present value with monthly compounding. What is the answer? You need to make a lump sum payment of $10 million 10 years from now. Interest rate is 5% per year compounded monthly. How much should you invest today? So what should be the present value for it? So your future value is 10 million. You may need to make a payment of 10 million in future. And time is 10 years. Interest rate is 5. So what is the present value if it is continuously compounded? 6.07. So present value is future value multiplied by e to the power minus r t. So future value is 10 million. It is compound. Oh, okay, it is monthly. Sorry, I thought it is continuous. So it is monthly compounding. So in monthly compounding, simply you put in future value as 10 million. You put in payment as 0. You put in years as 10 into 12. So years are 10, and if you multiply it by 12, it will be 120. And you put in rate as 5 divided by 12. That is your 5 divided by 12. That is your rate. You put in present value as 0. You put in future value as is 10, and when you compute PV, it will be 6.07 million for monthly compounding. So simply same method remains the same. You only have another variable missing, so you can find that out. Similarly, you can also calculate present value of an annuity. So for example, suppose you are considering purchasing a financial asset that promises to pay 1000 euros per year for 5 years. So now it will be paying 1000 every year, which means it is an annuity. It is not one cash flow. So 1000 every 5 years. So that means your payment is 1000 and your number of periods is 5. With the first payment 1 year from now. So that means it is an ordinary annuity. Required return is 12% per year. How much should you pay for this asset? So when will you pay it? You will pay it today. So that means payment should be the same as present value of this annuity. So you have to find out present value of annuity. And how do you find out present value of annuity? Similarly, you plug in n in your calculator, payment, r, future value is 0. When you find out present value, it will give you the present value of this annuity or the payment that you should make as of today. So 1005 12 0, and when you compute PV, it should be 3660 no 3604. Yes, so $3604 should be your present value, should be the payment that you make today in order for this annuity to be bought. If in market this annuity is available for 37, let's say 3700, if it is available for 3700 in market, you will not buy it. Why? Because it is available at a higher price compared to its value. But if it is available in market for, let's say, 3500, you will buy it. Why? Because it has a lower price compared to its value. This is ordinary annuity. Is your calculator at ordinary mode? So you plug in what are your values, check values, press recall and n. Recall n. 5, then press recall and IY. Recall and PV, recall and PMT. recall and FV, you wouldn't have removed number from FV. What is it? 0. Now compute PV. Your calculator would be at begin mode. Can you show it to me? So calculator is at begin mode because you see BGN written here. So first change it by second set, and second begin, second set. And once that BGN is removed from the top, then your calculator would be at normal mode. So next question is on annuity due. You are retiring today and must choose to take your retirement benefits either as a lump sum or as an annuity. So you have two options: either take it as lump sum as of today or take an annuity. And which one will you take? You will take the one which has higher value. So in that case, you should be able to value the annuity. Your company's benefits officer presents you with two alternatives: an immediate lump sum of $2 million or an annuity with 20 payments. So he says that either take $2 million or take an annuity, and that annuity has 20 payments of 200,000 a year. So that means payment per year is 200,000. With the first payment starting today, which means this is an annuity due and not an ordinary annuity. The interest rate at your bank is 7%. That is, if you receive it, you will be if you receive this 2 million, you will be investing it at 7% per year compounded annually. Which option has the greater present value? So if when you receive this payment, at what rate would you invest it? You will invest it at 7%. So in order to compare this value with annuity, you should calculate annuity's value at the same date. So this is today, this is future. So you should calculate present value of all these future annuities as of today. So that means you have to find out present value to compare it with lump sum. And how do you find out? You just plug in the numbers 20 and 200,000 is your payment, 7 is your IVA, 0 compute PV, 2.121. Okay, so this ordinary annuity due. So you would have converted your calculator to begin mode. So when you convert it to begin mode, your answer will be 2267, something like that, 119. So that means you will receive the value of this annuity is 2.267 million. So value of this annuity is 2.267 million, and you are being offered a 2 million. So that means it is better to go with this annuity. So you will receive the payment and you will invest it, and so you will benefit from it. So ignore any tax differences. There may be tax differences between these, but at level 1 you will be ignoring tax differences. That will be a separate topic in level 3. That is tax planning. The next one, perpetuity, is the British government once issued a type of security called a console bond, which promised to pay a level cash flow indefinitely. Level cash flow means same cash flow. Indefinitely means that it is a perpetuity. So if same cash flow happens for ever or in indefinite period, that is known as perpetuity. If a console bond paid 100 per year in perpetuity, that is payment is 100, and the required rate of return is 5%, what would it be worth today? That means you have to find out its worth today. That means its value or price as of today. And formula for perpetuity is payment divided by return or required rate of return. So which means that it should be 100 divided by 0.05, which is 2000. 100 divided by 0.05, which should be 2000. So that's how you calculate present value of perpetuity. Obviously there cannot be a future value because it will continue forever. So there is no end to it. So you cannot find a future value of this perpetuity. So again, so far we discussed FV, PV. if any other variable is missing, that can also be calculated using same method. So for example, for 1998, Limited Brands Inc. recorded net sales of 8436. So 1998, if you are standing today at 1998, your present value is 8436. For 2002, Limited Banks recorded a net sales of 8445, only slightly higher than 1998. Over the 4 period ended from 1998 to 2002, so there are 4 periods. How? 99 will be first one, then 2000, and then 2001, and then 2002. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1998 is t is equals to 0. That is today. What was the rate of growth of net sales, which is also known as CAGR? Net sales compound annual growth rate. So growth rate, how do you find that out? You have PV, you have future value, and you have number of periods. You have to compute R. So your N is 4, your PV is minus 8436, your FV is 8445, and R you have to find out, payment is 0. So if you compute R, that will be the compounded annual growth rate of net sales. 48436, 8445. IY is, you have to calculate, what is it? 0.03, or it is 2.67%. We call PV 8436. It is 2.67%. So if your calculator is rounded off to 1 decimal, then it will be, or 2 decimal, it will be 0.03. Otherwise, it will be 2.67%. Also keep your calculator to at least 8 decimal places. Otherwise, you may end up getting wrong answer. Then how do you change decimal places? So press second and press format. And when you press second and format, you will see DEC written on your screen. And then you can change it. You can say DEC equals to 8, enter. When you press 8, enter, it will set your calculator to 8 decimal places. Or you can choose 10 or whatever you want to choose. But keep it at maybe 6 or 8 at least, so that you get correct answer. So this means rate will be 2.67%. So easily you can calculate it. So in this example, you had PV, you had FV, and you calculated rate, you had N. Now there can be a case in which you have PV, you have FV, you have rate, but you do not have N. So you can calculate that. For example, you are interested in determining how long it will take an investment of 10 million to double in value. So that means if you have 10 million today, what is the PV? 10 million. And what is the future value that you want? 20 million. That is double the 10 million. So 20 million. Current interest rate is 7%. So how many years would it take for this to be achieved? That is your number of years. Again, you plug in the same numbers in PV and in FV, in payment, in rate, and you compute N, and it will be 10.2 years approximately. So it means that there will be approximately 10 years for this to be achieved, or payment to be double. Similarly, if you have all of these and you want to calculate payment, you can also do that. So for example, you are planning to purchase a $120,000 house by making a down payment of 20,000 and borrowing the remainder with a 30-year fixed rate mortgage with monthly payments. First payment is due at t is equals to 1. This means this is an ordinary annuity. Why? Because had it been an annuity due, payment would have been made at t is equals to 0. So this means that it is an ordinary annuity. Current mortgage interest rates are quoted at 8% with monthly compounding. So it is a monthly compounding, remember, and payments will also be monthly. What will your mortgage payments be? So that means first you need to find out what is the future value that you need to accumulate, and then you will find out or what is the present value that you need to pay, and then you will find out that what is actually the payment. So if you look into it, you are planning to purchase a house. When will you purchase this? You will purchase this today. So that means house value is the present value. But then you are told that by making a down payment of 20,000. If you have already paid 20,000 as down payment, then how much would you borrow? You will only borrow 100,000. So that means present value of your mortgage, although present value of house is 120, but for mortgage, present value will be 100,000 because you have already paid 20,000. So this is the present value of mortgage. And for how many years do you want the mortgage? You want the mortgage for 30 years. What is the rate on this mortgage? Rate on this mortgage is 8%. And you have to find out the payment. But before you find out the payment, there is another adjustment which you need to make. So this is a monthly payment and this is monthly compounded rate. So that means N would be 30 into 12. So there will be a total of 360 payments. So 30 into 12, and the rate would be 8 divided by 12, which is 0.67%. So if you plug in this present value which you want to accumulate, which is 100,000, and you plug in the payment is 0 because you have to calculate it, future value is 0, and you plug in the rate as 0.67, and you plug in the number of period as 660, and you keep your calculator at ordinary NVT. Why? Because first payment is due, t is equals to 1. So what is the payment that you need to make? Payment would be 736, I think 737. N is 360, IY is 0.67, PV is minus 100,000 or plus 100,000, whatever, and future value is 0. So your payment is 736.6. This should be your monthly payment. 8% is the annual rate. This is a monthly compounded rate. Compounding is being done monthly, or the number of periods are taken in terms of month. So number of periods and rates should align. Whatever the number of periods are, that should be the rate. So 8 divided by 12, which is 0.67. You plug this in and you find your answer for payment, and that is 736.6. Any problem so far? So last concept in this reading is present and future value equivalence. So there is a principle known as additivity principle, cash flow additivity principle. Cash flow additivity principle says that two cash flows can be added or subtracted only if they happen at the same period of time. Like for example, if you have $100 as of today and you will receive 120 after 1 year, and if I ask you what is the total amount that you are receiving, it is not 100 plus 120. You will first calculate its present future value and then add it to 120. Or similarly, if you have, let's say, $80, if you have to make a payment of $80 as of today, and against this payment you will receive $100 after 1 year, and if I ask you what is the net benefit, you cannot say it as 100 minus 80. So you will first bring it back, discount it back, and then you will add or subtract it. For two cash flows to be added or subtracted, both should happen at the same period of time. That difference reflects the time value of money, because value of $80 as of today and $100 as of after 1 year is different. So if you are, for example, if someone is asking you for money and you have, for example, if you are making an investment or doing by purchasing something, and it is purchased for $80 today, and then you sell it again for $80 after 1 year. So on the face of it, it looks like you haven't made a gain or loss, but even then you have made a gain or loss. Why? Because this $80 is not the same as this $80. For you to calculate gain or loss, you will first discount it back and then make the addition or subtraction. This is known as cash flow additivity principle. So this is about time value of money and its questions and calculations and use of calculator. Let's take a break before we go further.